One of the biggest questions on soybean farms across the country going into 2020 is, which trait will you use, Xtend or Enlist? We're going to talk today about some of the strengths and weaknesses of each of these traits.
Personally, I'm really happy that we have these choices because just a few years back, we were looking at, well, do I want to use Roundup Ready soybeans or Liberty Link soybeans? And I had one mode of action that I could spray on these beans. Now, each of those trait platforms have multiple modes of action that I can use post-emerge. That's great, and it's going to be even better when we have Xtend Flex that also adds glufosinate or Liberty tolerance to the Xtend trait. Now with Xtend, you have the opportunity to spray Roundup and you have the opportunity to spray dicamba over the top of those soybeans. That's great. It's worked great. The genetics have been nice, but we're going to talk about some of the differences because there's so many questions coming in every week to our show about, hey, what do you think about the new Enlist soybeans? Are they going to yield and are they going to perform?
Okay, before we get to the Enlist, let's talk a little bit more about Xtend. I love the ability to, or love having the ability to spray dicamba out there because dicamba can control a lot of the tough Roundup resistant weeds, everything from mare's tail to ragweed to palmer pigweed and water hemp, even kochia. So that's great. Here's the big problem though. I love how Darren said you have the opportunity to spray dicamba. Well, you may or may not have the opportunity to spray dicamba post-emerge because there are some states that have more restrictions than what the federal label will say on dicamba. In other words, well, I'll just give you an example. There are a couple states like Minnesota and Illinois. June 20th, you're cut off. Well, what happens if you plant your soybeans June 20th? Well, now you do not have the opportunity to spray dicamba post-emerge, and that's the biggest challenge that I see with that whole technology is with the early dates, you don't get the chance to spray the weeds when they are there. You have to spray based on the calendar date.
Well, the reason that some states put on different regulations or additional regulations on dicamba applications and Xtend crops is because they're concerned about volatility and drift-related issues. Now, you may say, well, they're concerned about those, but how many have they had? Let's face it, there have been some. There have been some issues out there, and not all of it is due to not following the label. Now, the label has got a number of different requirements versus any other products that you're using where you're limited on what spray nozzles, what tank mix partners, how much water you have to use, all those things. Those things have actually proven to be pretty good. Where growers have followed the label to the letter, we've had very few issues with volatility or drift that we've become aware of. It's been, a few different things that have happened out there. The volatility piece is the one that's most concerning to me. Physical drift, hey, if it's windy and you're spraying, shame on you. If you're not using the right nozzles, you got fine particles and it moves over to the neighbor's field before it hits the ground, shame on you. Those are things that we know about and we've known about for years. The volatility piece where you spray it, it lands, and it moves later, that's a real concern for us. And even the air inversions, we've never seen this kind of issue with air inversions before like we have with dicamba applications. You got to be aware of those things. You can control this. If you're nervous about, hey, I'm planting Xtend, but I'm nervous about spraying the dicamba, I'm not nervous about it. I just want to make sure that I'm following the label and doing things right.
Okay, so a lot of people, rather than going to Xtend and having to spray dicamba, are interested in Enlist because you can spray Liberty, or you can spray the new 2,4-D that has virtually no volatility or drift properties, or Roundup. So you've got three different choices there for non-selective herbicides, or mostly non-selective herbicides. So that sounds really good. So why would a person want to stay with Xtend when you can go over to Enlist and have all these options? Well, probably the biggest reason is the genetics. So far, a lot of people have had fantastic yields out of the Xtend.
Well, it's not that they haven't had good luck with the Enlist, they just haven't planted it yet, Brian. And whenever you're comparing something of, well, I don't know about this one, but I do know about that one, I get it. That's a tough choice. Now, when I look at the two genetics, and I look at them a lot, and I have for the last few years, side by side, same maturities of beans from Xtend to Enlist, I think the yield is very comparable. I'm not concerned about there's going to be any sort of yield drag issue. And in fact, where we're hearing yield drag issues out in the industry is from companies that don't have Enlist beans to sell. Don't listen to people with those self-serving messages that, oh, there's yield drag. Well, how many do you have to offer me? Well, I don't have any. Oh, okay, so I'm just going to badmouth somebody else? That's terrible for our industry. I hope that stops this year, but if you're hearing, oh, Enlist doesn't yield, that's absolute garbage. What I do look at is, what are the defensive traits that I need? And if I need a bean that can tolerate frog eye, or I need a bean that can tolerate white mold, or I need a bean that can tolerate high pH soils or salty situations, make sure you're picking the right one. If you can't find that in the Xtend trait, but you can in the Enlist trait, then great, plant the Enlist. Or if you can't find it in the Enlist trait, but you do in the Xtend trait, great, plant the defensive traits that you need, especially when there's ones that you really can't protect against. Like root knot nematode, for example. If you can't find a root knot nematode resistant variety, you just don't have a substitute for that. There's not a great treatment that's 100% a root knot nematode. Or with white mold. If you've got a soybean that's terrible on white mold, I'm not going to plant it on my farm because white mold's an issue that I can't 100% stop.
So in summary, with Xtend versus Enlist in terms of soybeans, our general opinion, based on all of our research around the United States, has simply been, we like Xtend, we like Enlist. Either direction you want to go is fine in our opinion, as long as you're picking something that has the defensive traits that you need, and just make sure that you are looking at that. Also, I guess I would just say, if everybody around you is planting Xtend, it's going to be a little harder for you to switch Enlist. But the flip side is, a lot of people want to go Enlist. So if all your neighbors are going to plant Enlist and you're the only person with Xtend, it's probably going to be hard to stay Xtend. So I know it's a challenging question. It's something we're looking at even for our own farm. There's no one perfect answer, but the main reason we're talking about this today is just so you understand, we really love both options, and both options are far superior to the old Roundup, conventional, or Liberty Link trait choices that we used to have, because these new choices allow you more opportunity to get those resistant weeds under control.
Well, we're glad to have more choices, especially when it comes to controlling weeds like our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed later in the show.